What's up, guys? Welcome to another 10-minute talk here with Coach Caitlin. And we also got, who we got?
Coach Justin. What's going on,
Coach
guys?
Justin on the mic. Guys, today we're going to talk about one of our favorite macros. So we talked about protein, we talked about fats. Today we're going to talk about carbohydrates. And I want to just kind of start off this talk by saying, one of the most common things that I hear someone tell me when they want to lose weight is that they're going to cut out carbs, or if I even look at bread, I gain weight. Well, let me kind of settle your thoughts a little bit and tell you that carbs are not the problem. The problem is overconsumption of calories as a whole. And I said that last week when we spoke about fats, because there's just so much negativity with both of those things. And carbs tend to have a bad rap just because they're easier to overconsume, because they're found in those super processed, hyper palatable foods like Oreos and Doritos, where you can't just have one. So it's less about how many or how few carbs you should have and more about like, what kinds of carbs are we eating?
Sure. Yeah, I think people think of carbs as like these little things that get into their pants and make them tighter, right? They tighten up their pants. Those are carbohydrates, right? We want to cut those out completely so that our clothes don't fit any tighter. But the truth, like you said, is carbohydrates get the blame, and sometimes fats get the blame because of the fact that they're a lot easier to overeat, and so that when people completely cut them out, that means they cut out the good things that they bring too, which we'll talk about.
Mhm.
They see more of a drastic shift in their weight because they're only looking at that one metric, right? They're only looking at weight. So to kind of start this conversation off, like Caitlin said, they're not something to be afraid of. They're something to be understood so that you can use them properly, right? Just like anything else.
Mhm.
So I want to break down the word carbohydrate for just a second. So carbohydrate, right? The last part of that word, hydrate. Carbs actually pull water into the cell when they get broken down. So that's why you may feel a little bit puffier after eating a lot of carbohydrates at one time, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a thing that's supposed to happen, right? It hydrates the cell. It makes it more useful for work, if you want to put it to you like that. And in my point of view, I look at carbohydrates as almost like a therapeutic macronutrient, right? Like if you're trying to
Mhm.
recover, you probably need to hit the carbohydrates a little bit better, right? If you're trying to get energy for something, you probably need to hit the carbohydrates a little bit better, right? If you're not really requiring them, you can probably chill out on them. So that's kind of how I see it in my head.
Yeah. And that's a really good point because carbs are actually something that keeps our brains healthy and fueled. Like, have you ever tried to consume less carbs in your diet and you experience like some negative side effects? Like you got irritable, you got moody, or you had some brain fog, you got kind of pissed off at people. Well, carbohydrates are an extremely important energy source for our brain. So without carbs, our brain function is going to suffer. In fact, the glucose that we break carbs down to is the preferred source of energy for our brains and organs, as well as for high intensity exercise. So if you're trying to work out with a purpose without eating carbohydrates, it's going to become really difficult to do, especially on that recovery side of things too, like Justin said.
100%. And like if anybody's a runner or they've experienced hitting the wall, so to speak, right, and they've bonked during a workout or during a training session, that's what that is, right? They've run out of glycogen in the system, basically, right? Because our body stores it in the liver and the muscle, but it can only store so much in the liver and the muscle. And once we've exhausted that store, right, you're going to feel significantly less energetic, very depleted, much less capable of doing work. But to Caitlin's original point is, if we know how to manage them and eat them properly, they're just like any other nutrient. They can be used to your advantage. So what would be uses for them, Caitlin? Like what would we use them for good?
So a couple things like I said, carbs are great sources of energy. They're going to help your body recover better from your workouts, but also they're really good for helping with your gut health because with carbohydrates, with the good kinds of carbohydrates, like the complex carbs, and we'll talk about that, is fiber. And fiber is something that's extremely important for nutrient absorption. And then when it comes to carbohydrates, like we can break them down into simple and a complex carb. And those simple carbs, think of them as things that can be broken down and digested very, very quickly in the body, like uh, refined sugars, candies, even milk. But then complex carbs take a much longer time for you to break down and digest. So they can be found in foods like rice, like brown rice, things like whole grains, like vegetables, and they're just going to keep you fuller longer than those simple carbs that are going to give you that like blood sugar spike where you feel real good and then you feel real bad real fast.
100%. Yeah, and I want to make a distinction too, is and not anything on you, Caitlin. I want to stay away from like good and bad as words to
Hmm.
define carbohydrates. I usually do this with food in general because food can't lie, cheat, or steal. So it's not good or bad. It is either nutrient dense or not. Right. It's
Yep, that's how
either
I look at it too.
right. It's either healthy or unhealthy in terms of your general goal. Right. So just like you said, the nutrient dense carbohydrates, whether simple or complex, are going to be the ones you want to steer more towards, right? Because the nutrients like fiber, like different prebiotics that we might get to help break down or help our gut health, and the myriad of micronutrients that are found in like fruits, for example, are going to be the
Hmm.
things that help everything else run more efficiently. So understand when you're cutting out carbohydrates, you're actually cutting out things that are helpful for every other process in your body. So consider that before you make a decision like that, right? Now, at the end of the day, not everybody needs the same amount of carbohydrates, right? So, like Caitlin alluded to earlier, I would personally judge the amount of carbohydrates you need on how you feel, right? So, based off your training, based off your sleep, based off your energy and general mood and demeanor throughout the day, do you feel as if you are running low, right? As if you're unrecovered and you're not getting back to 100% for the next day and the subsequent days, or do you constantly feel kind of like bloated, super full, or like your blood sugar crashed all the time, so you feel this like you need more and more carbohydrate, right? So those can be just a few indicators of where your carbohydrate like need is at. Plus, are you eating the more nutrient dense carbohydrates, right? Because while we could say you can get 25 carbs from a donut, you can get 25 carbs from an apple, which is a true statement, right? Generally, the apple is going to have water and fiber and micronutrients in it. And the donut is probably going to leave you hungrier in the next 10 minutes, right? Because it's going to spike your blood sugar and come back down. So to Caitlin's point, if you want good adherence to your plan, you're going to have to choose the right types of carbohydrate.
Yeah, exactly. Those complex carbs are just going to make it better for you to prevent overeating, for you to not be as hungry, for you to feel better overall. But there is a time and place for those simple carbohydrates. Like Justin said, there's no good or bad carb. There's nutrient dense and less nutrient dense. And those simple carbs can be really, really good surrounding one of your workouts. Like if you're training at a very high intensity, and you want to recover from your workouts, you want to get in a fast digesting carb after your workout combined with a fast digesting protein. And then before your workout to give you that quick fuel so you don't feel kind of bogged down by the fiber and the long digestion. If you're having something right before your workout, having something really quick and fast to digest to give you that energy right then and there is going to be really beneficial.
100%, 100%. So like in my, let's give some examples, right? Like in my course of my day, I prefer more fruits throughout the day, right? Like I eat a lot of mixed berries. I'll eat a pretty good amount of like whole apples, whole oranges, um, sometimes mangoes, just kind of depends on what's in season. Um, but I try to steer towards those things mainly because they help keep me full, right? They're not going to cost me, or I'm not trying to trade off the tons of calories that come from other sources of carbohydrates sometimes, right? No, don't get me wrong. I had rice last night with some bison, right? And I also eat toast in the morning from time to time. I also eat oatmeal, things like that. It's not like I only stick to fruits, but I fill the majority of my day with fruits, mainly because I can keep full, right? So they're a high volume, lower calorie alternative. I know that they're going to serve micronutrient and fiber purposes, right? Like we talked about just earlier. And they give me the flexibility, like Kaylin just alluded to have those more simple carbohydrates, right? around my workout that had I eaten, 2 slices of bread earlier in the day, or toast, no matter what, it's whole grain or whatever, I can actually use those carbohydrates now in a more targeted setting, to help me possibly perform better in the workout. So that's kind of how I use mine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Carbohydrates definitely help you perform better in the workouts. And that's kind of I'll go off of like what you're doing and how I hit my carbs, because like we gotta give people like these helpful like application how they can actually do it. So like I do oats, I do like cream of rice as well. I do rice, but then I'm also a huge fruit eater as well. So like I love bananas, I love apples, I love, all different types of berries. And for Justin's same reason, like I love how they keep me full. They're more nutrient dense. They're like they help my sweet tooth a little bit, but I'm still getting so much from them. And they make me feel better than like a lot of other sources.
I agree. I do want to point out something too, that like when me and Caitlin are having this conversation, her goal is different than my goal, right? And
Hmm.
like a current point in time. So Caitlin may eat a majority of carbohydrates from more simple, like closer to those simple sources, because she has to get in a more volume, right? If she tried to eat every carbohydrate she can eat from watermelon, she's going to be gut bustingly full because she's intaking so much water and so much fiber in that process, right? And she's not going to be able to hit that. So it's like it's goal accordant, or goal dependent, I guess. But the thing I want to say before we wrap this up is that understanding what a carbohydrate can do for you will give you much better context as to how you need to use them on a personal level, right? So if you need to go tomorrow and eat a bowl of oats, right, and oatmeal in the morning, and see how that affects your energy levels in the coming 1, 2, 3 hours before your next meal, use that as feedback, right? Use that as feedback as, okay, well, maybe I don't need that much carbohydrate in the morning, or maybe I do need that much carbohydrate in the morning because my day starts pretty hectic, and towards the middle of the day I can be lighter because I'm a little bit more sedentary, and then towards the end of the day, is when I train. So I might need a little bit more carbohydrate there, right? Just to kind of depends on where your training lies, how your day and your energy is structured throughout the day. So that would be, I would say, is take a look at what you're already doing and see how that affects you, and then see if you may need to make any adjustments.
Yeah, I like to say that the science can direct us and guide us, but we need to at some point listen to our own body and understand like the feedback that it's giving us so that we can make the best decision for us based on how we feel and what helps us perform at our best. So, guys, to wrap it up, you don't need to fear the carbs or you don't need to cut them out of your life. Like, you just need to be able to use them appropriately for your goals and understand what feels best for you. So that's all that we got for today. But I hope you guys are enjoying your 10-minute talks, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you.